Hello and welcome to the Petticoated Swashbuckler. My name is Maren and today we're starting a new project. I love starting a new project. Last year I was headed to a ball in England. I started making some 1840s underwear. I was getting ready for that 1840s ball, and then that didn't happen for me. I mean, it happened. I just wasn't able to attend. But I was like, well, I'm sure. I mean, I now have an 1840s like chemise and corset and padded petticoat, and I'm sure I will find use for that one day. I also spent a lot of time last year reimagining and creating the kind of capsule wardrobe of a domestic servant from 1929. And I was really kind of relieved when I was done with that project. It was a lot of fun, but I felt like I was ready to tackle new eras, not just the 1920s. But I thought, this kind of insight into domestic service and sort of smart ways of thinking about clothes on a budget, I'm sure that'll come in hand one day. Well, the day has arrived for both of those things, maybe. I'll explain the maybe, the little caveat, in just a minute. So this summer, sort of late spring, early summer, I'm attending a LARP, a live action roleplay, where I am again portraying a domestic servant. But this time it is not the 1920s, she's not a housekeeper, she is the chambermaid in a Norwegian family in the early 1830s. Now, or like the mid 1830s really, early to mid. While you still have the big poofy sleeve madness and the tall crazy hair madness and everything. Think Gentleman Jack or Wives and Daughters. I'm super excited about this. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I just really wanted to finish up my Tudor stuff before I really got started with this. And I thought it would be interesting to recreate. Because if you look at fashion plates, you usually see people in the latest fashions. But Norway was not the fashion capital of the world in the 1830s by any stretch of the imagination. Norway wasn't even an independent country. We were part of Sweden, or ruled by the Swedish king. So the fashions would probably be a little later in arriving in Norway. And seeing as my character is a servant, I think chances are most of her clothes will be a little bit out of date, because most of them probably were inherited, or they'll have to be in really kind of sturdy, kind of almost homespun, home created fabrics. So you either create something for yourself, but you use really cheap fabrics, or you have fancier fabrics, but it's inherited from someone fancier than you, and it's a little out of date. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to try and see what I have? Because the 1830s, I've done a little bit of research on this by now, and it's very difficult to find portraits of Norwegian servants in the 1830s. I've had to rely on very strange and maybe not fully reliable sources. One of the sources I've been looking at is the paintings that nationally romantic artists made as they travelled through the country. These are problematic because they are showing off people in their kind of regional dress, what we today in Norway call bunad, which is every little town or little place has a bunad, and it's our national costume. We love it. I have several. I love them. But this was part of the kind of inventing of Norway as a culture, as a country, where artists and poets and writers all kind of headed off into like the rural, the most rural, the most isolated parts of Norway to document how the real Norwegians looked, the ones who hadn't been corrupted by Danish rule for 434 years. And I am guessing that a lot of these paintings, like, it wasn't the painter just sitting on a rock painting people as I went past. He went around to people going like, can you put on your Norwegianist dress and go over to that super picturesque spot and look very, very Norwegian, please. So even though they give you some idea of like the different regional variations in costume, and many of them are from the 1830s, they're not a brilliant source. However, if we are going to take them at face value, they do show people in very old-fashioned clothing. A lot of these people, they are probably farmers, maybe fishermen if you're at the coastline, and they seem to be dressed in very kind of they look very 18th century. These paintings are from the 1820s, 1830s, but you could have, if you'd said, you know, that these people are living in the 1760s, you would have believed it, because their kind of silhouettes and the garments they're wearing are very 18th century. Now another source that I'm using, and this is a case of where you as a historian often have to find a source that was meant for something else and kind of use it for something other than its original purpose. Historians, we do this a lot. Because especially the further kind of you get back in history, the less people wrote down, or the less has survived to us. So in a lot of cases, you really need to be creative and inventive. One example could be to take laws against different kinds of clothing, called sumptuary laws, and use them to get an idea of what sort of clothing people were wearing, for example. That's not its intended use, but it can work for that. And in Bergen, in Norway, we have a museum about leprosy. We have a leprosy museum. It sounds like a strange thing, but this museum is situated in an old leper hospital, and it's about both the people who suffered from leprosy in the early 1800s, but also about the guy who invented a cure for leprosy. It's a very interesting story. Definitely a story for another time, because otherwise we're going to be sitting here for hours. But I would recommend looking up that story. And if you are in Bergen, especially in the summer when I think their opening hours are a little more, I would definitely recommend going to see that museum. But the part of the exhibit, as it were, are a lot of portraits, paintings, drawings made by an artist of people in that hospital suffering from leprosy in the early 1800s, in the 1820s and 1830s. And these are not the wealthy people of the country. These are farmers, servants. Probably some of them were homeless. I mean, these are on the kind of lower rungs of society, society's ladder. And they haven't been asked to dress up nicely. They haven't been asked to look particularly kind of old-fashioned or Norwegian. They are just being portrayed in what they are wearing. You usually don't see them further than like down here. And the men are often undressed on their upper body. So you often just because the point of these portraits was to show off the disfigurement in their faces. But for a lot of the women, they have they have some sort of headwear, and you can see their kind of necklines and upper body, at least down to like bust level. And it would seem that the 18th century died hard in Norway. Like, these people, they look fairly 18th century to me. There's a lot of those kind of square necklines. There's a lot of the kind of fichus. It's a lot of kind of undercaps with overcaps on. And also if you look at some of the kind of records of what people were wearing or brought with them, we have some kind of descriptions of people who are running from the law, for example. they seem to be describing jackets and petticoats and sometimes gowns, but it's a lot of jackets and petticoats and aprons and shawls. So I think a fairly 18th century approach to this costume wouldn't be that wrong. Now, no surprise to anyone who's followed my channel for a little while, I have a lot of 18th century clothing. That's not a problem. However, most of my 18th century clothing is fairly fancy. So, you know, not all of that would be usable in this situation. However, I have found some pieces that I think I can be kind of, I'll be able to build this wardrobe around, as it were. Now, I do have a conundrum, because I made these beautiful stays, corsets, what should we call them? Pretty 1840s corset that I made last year. It's fairly prettily made. I'm very happy with it. It has a nice busk and everything. Handmade, like hand bound eyelet holes. It's got a lot of, yeah, it's like, this is nice. It's pretty. I can wear this, but it might be a little too fancy for my character. She's 20, like early 20s, and she's been poor for pretty much all her life, and I think a lot of the clothes that she owns are either hand-me-downs, in which case this is too modern, or they could be made to her, but then they wouldn't have been made kind of as prettily as this. This is absolutely an option. And I love these days. They look nice on me. They're really comfortable. I feel really pretty and really cute wearing them. But I have an option B in my little box of tricks down here. And that's these. And these are actually part of my national costume. I made these in 2018, several years ago. They are so pretty, and these are actually a copy of stays that have been found in the area of Norway where I grew up for most of my childhood and youth. They are not they're not boned, even though you might, like, if you look at them, they do have boning channels, but they're not boned. It's like 2 bones down here in the front where the lacing is, and that's it. Apart from that, they're not boned. So they're more like jumps than stays, really. But I know they fit me well. They are really, really comfortable. I think, as far as I can tell from portraiture in the period, it would be a good thing. Like, it would be a good fit to wear underneath those dresses and underneath those clothes. Like, you wouldn't be wearing them with their tabs kind of on top of your petticoats. You'd probably wear the petticoats on top of the tabs, because you want a really kind of rounded waist with no dipping and no kind of fluff further down on your hips. But I mean, if I could wear this with, like, skirts, it's really difficult to show, by the way. There's a lot of lacing ribbon as well. If I could wear this with, like, a skirt around the waist, I think this would look quite nice. I think this would work. And they are very, I mean, it's a beautiful fabric. I love this fabric, but it's wool, and it's quite a sort of homespun wool quality, which might explain why she could afford something that's been maybe a little, like, it's probably inherited, but maybe it's like inherited from her mum instead of her employer, or maybe they were even made for her at some point. So yeah, I think these are a good option B. I might go for those. In my bunad kind of hoard, I do have some other stuff that I can use. I have this beautiful shift. That's very nice. I might make one that's like this, but not wear this, because this has some really cute embroidery on the cuffs that took forever to embroider, and that I have forgotten how I made, and that I also embroidered while I was sitting guard at my grandmother's deathbed. So it's quite kind of a sentimental piece of clothing to me. But it would be nice to have another one that's like this, but that I'm not that afraid of like ruining. For legwear, I do have stockings, knitted stockings. These are blue and knitted in a beautiful pattern. It's not my handiwork, it's my mum's. She's a brilliant knitter. I have, however, knitted these much plainer red ones, woolen stockings. They stay up by the use of garters, and these are traditional Norwegian woven garters. No idea if these were still used in the 1830s, but I think if you're living in the countryside or if you're not super rich, then probably. I mean, they work really well and they're beautiful and colourful and cheap to produce. You could probably make them yourself. For headwear, I do have this quite sweet little cap that's very similar in shape to the caps worn by people in those leper hospital paintings, with a little kind of poof on top. And you can see, like, if I hang on, just gonna give myself a center part, and we kind of focus all my curls forward. Then if I put this on, can you see that we're kind of emulating the hairstyles of the 1830s with a big stuff on top and then curls in the front? So it's a very cheap and easy way of doing that. This too is wool. It's actually a wool satin. It's decorated with a small amount of velvet ribbon. So this would be something nice. This is what you wear to church. And I have talked to the woman who plays the other lady's maid, or chambermaid, and we are going to make matching caps and aprons out of white linen that we can wear for like work-related tasks. I do have clogs. I'll find some other shoes as well, but I think these are going to be perfect for like clumping. I don't want to be too elegant. All of the portraits or like fashion plates that you see of servants, domestic servants in the 1830s, they look really dainty and cute, and I don't think like an early 20s Norwegian poor girl would be like the epitome of grace and elegance. I think clumping around in these would be quite like amusing. I have also got this, which is a petticoat, and it's also from my bunad hoard. It's wool, and it's, can you see it's hemmed with these amazing kind of really rough linen. It's super comfortable to wear. It too looks kind of homespun, like it's been dyed with madder and like woven by some local woman and not bought for a lot of money. And it's full of wool because I wore it a lot last year when I learned how to spin. So it's full of wool. I should probably deal with that before I actually wear it underneath something else. So that's the pieces that I have and that I think I can wear and use. I do also have like an apron that's kind of checkered and blue. I do have just a rough kind of linen shift that I can use for a nightgown. But I still want to make some new stuff. And I'm going to show you, because I've already gone fabric shopping and I'm eyeing my fabrics behind the camera. So just give me a minute and I'll find them for you. Hang on. All right. Oop, where's my stool? There's my stool. Here's my fabrics. I've got this beautiful fabric for a gown I want to make a gown. I want to make a gown in a sort of 1820 style. That's a little, you know, probably inherited from her employer. But there's a beautiful cream beige cotton with little red print flowers. I think would be perfect. Sorry, it's a tambourine there. Next up I have this. This is also a cotton, kind of brown with reddish checks. I think will be perfect for like an apron or a shawl or something. The same with this one. It's beautiful brown with lighter brown squares on it. I think it'd be perfect. And then I also want to make a bed gown. It's called a trøye in Norwegian. And I have this amazingly beautiful striped blue fabric. And I thought this one I can actually make look a little 1830s with those big sleeves, because this fabric looks home woven. This is something you could get cheaper, and maybe she has like splurged on some fairly affordable fabric and made her own big sleeved bed gown jacket sort of thing to wear when she want to feel extra fancy and fashionable. So these are my plans. I hope you found them interesting. I hope you want to come along on my new exciting sewing journey. I'm kind of eyeing the battery sign on my camera going red and flashing, so I think I'm running out of time, but I'll be back in a fortnight when we're going to get started, and we're going to get started on making a little dress. But until then, bye.